Good morning. Welcome to the King's Reports News Hour. 16th year of Chungi, the sixth month, and the 19th day by the heavenly calendar. Yes, that's right, 19th day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Chengu, Kyungji Moon. Let's go take our tour around the kingdom. And right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, it is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. 83 for a high today, humid with times of cloud and sun. Heavy thunderstorm this afternoon. Thunderstorms can cause flash flooding. 69 for a low tonight, partly cloudy and humid with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And in the father's hometown of Cheongju, North Pyongan province, in what is now North Korea, 83 degrees right now, mostly clear. Increasing cloudiness, 67 for a low tonight. Tomorrow, cloudy with a couple of thunderstorms. In the afternoon, a high of 80 degrees. The reason I've been giving the weather in Father's hometown of Cheongju is so that we can sort of be conscious of this every day and kind of symbolically claim it. And I find that, as I do this, I'm more and more interested in sort of thinking, what must the people up there be doing and what must they be going through? And God has led me to a YouTube channel. Now, he does that, he leads you to YouTube channels. Um, uh, by a young man, well, 31 years old, so that's young in my perspective. Young man who escaped from North Korea twice, he says, twice. And it's quite a he it's quite a channel. And one thing he does is he goes around with this sign and it says, "Ask a North Korean," something like that, I think. And people stop him on the street and they ask him questions about North Korea, and he answers their questions, what it's like there and this kind of stuff. And uh, really diverse questions. And there's also another video, not on his channel, but another channel where he gives his testimony about how he escaped from North Korea twice and wound up in America. And he's been in America 13 years. And he's quite fluent in English now. And in the beginning, I was, I'm always skeptical of. I always try to be skeptical of people who say things that I agree with or who say things that I like to hear. And so I approached this with a bit of skepticism, thinking, is this really a North Korean, or is he maybe someone who is trained to speak as if, But no, especially after hearing his testimony, I'm convinced. Yeah, he is the real thing. And I'm going to, after this is over, I'm going to put that link. I'm going to put a couple of links to in the description below this video. So if you are watching this live, come back to it later on, maybe in an hour or so, and I will put the links in. But it's really quite inspiring. I actually sent the link, especially of his testimony, to my grandchildren because he went through a situation where he's actually half Korean and half Chinese. His father is Chinese, his mother's Korean, North Korean, and his father abandoned the family when he was something like 4 or 5 years old. And he says his mother died of starvation. And when he says his mother died of starvation, he just says it so matter of factly, like I might say, "Oh, my mother died of of a broken hip or something." Actually, my mother died of cancer, and I might say it the same way, just like I did just now. Whereas to us, the agony of dying of hunger, we cannot even imagine. And so, as a child, he went through a lot, and he worked in a coal mine for a while. Anyway, I'm going to put the links in the description below because I think this is something that helps us to understand more about the situation in North Korea. I know there's another person, a young lady, Park Yeon-mi, who's also making a lot of videos, and some people have also questioned her authenticity. And I don't know about that, but uh, I assume I know. I'm more impressed by this guy than I am by Park Young-mi. And of course, there are others as well. There's the former vice consul of the North Korean embassy in London, but he's an old guy. I mean, and besides, he's a diplomat. He's part of the elite, so his testimony, not so much. It doesn't really tell you. He's not really representative of the overall North Korean population, but this guy really is, I think. And so I encourage all of you to. I already posted it on my X account, so if you can't wait for that um, link to show up on the description below, you can go to my X account after you watch this program, right? By the way, yeah, I'll apologize to what happened yesterday after the weather. All right. So anyway, Cheongju, 83 degrees right now. And meanwhile, in Northeast Pennsylvania at the Cheonryung Palace, 57 degrees and sunny right now, 91 for a high today, hot and humid with plenty of sun. Possible danger of dehydration. And tonight, clear and humid, low of 66. Liberty Rock RV Camp and Campground. Campground, that's it, not park ground. Campground in Limestone County, Texas, currently 74 and clear. And it is getting up to 96 today, increasing cloudiness with a thunderstorm. Tonight, clear and humid, 74. Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 74, mostly cloudy, and 74 for a low tonight. Low, cloudy and humid, thunderstorm in spots this evening. And tomorrow, 91 for a high, mostly cloudy and very humid, occasional rain, thunderstorm. And then at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 79 currently, mostly cloudy. Low of 72 tonight, passing evening shower or two, otherwise mostly cloudy and humid. Tomorrow, high of 89, cloudy in the morning, then times of clouds and sun in the afternoon. And in Ilan, Taiwan, currently 86 degrees, and getting down to 77 tonight. It's clear now, but there'll be thunderstorms in spots this evening, otherwise increasing clouds. Low of 77 tomorrow, high of 85. Windy with bands of rain and from tropical storm in the afternoon. All right. I showed you yesterday the map of the typhoon that is approaching Taiwan, and maybe I should bring that back. Maybe I should bring that back and show you where it is right now. Let's see here. Where are we right now? Okay. So yeah, well, it's a little bit closer, but it's still, and it's actually come down a little bit south now, so that the looks like the eye of the typhoon is now no longer expected to pass over Ilan. Ilan is right there on the northeast coast. On the northeast coast. Yesterday, the entire island of Taiwan was included in the cone, but today only the southern half. But of course, the effects of the typhoon will go out quite a bit of distance from this. So I'm sure that Ilan will have a heavy impact as well. And in fact, it's going to start, according to this, it's going to start tomorrow. Right, windy with bands of rain from tropical storm in the afternoon. And so that's what's going to happen there. So they're going to get hit tomorrow and Wednesday. This is the 12th and the 13th is when the eye is going to pass over the island of Taiwan. And then 09Z, that will be 09 Zulu, which is the same as the UTC or Greenwich Mean Time, GMT. And they are 8 hours ahead. So that'll be in the, I guess, 8 to 7, but in the afternoon, maybe in the tomorrow afternoon, or I'm sorry, Wednesday afternoon, that the eye is actually going to pass over the island. So let's pray that everyone there will be safe and that we will not have damage to the property or anything like that. All right, let's go to Father's Word. And here, Restoration of True God's Homeland, chapter 3. And title of the chapter is Why Do We Have to Do Dongbang Chokpa? which of course refers to breaking through on the neighborhood level, if you remember. Mhm. Let me get some light on this. Okay, here we go. All right. So father speaking in 1989, January 1st, he says, 여러분, means everyone. 선생님이 동반격파를 명령한 지 4년 세월이 걸렸습니다. 4 years have passed since I ordered you to do 동반격파, right? Breaking through on the neighborhood level. I've explained what that 동반격파 means. I've explained it many times. 이놈의 자식들, you rascals, basically. Okay. As the king would say, second king would say, father is speaking in scatological language. 선생님이 돈을 대줘야 되겠어요? Do I have to give you money for it to happen? 애국하는데 선생님이 돈을 대줘야 되겠어요? Do I have to give you money to do something patriotic? Peter Paraso, even if you have to sell your blood. And I don't think they do this in America. I don't think Red Cross or hospitals actually buy blood, do they? But in Korea, because I don't know if it's so much now, but certainly in the past, at certain times in the past, there wasn't enough voluntary donors, and so yes, hospitals and Red Cross and so forth would sometimes pay people to donate their blood. I don't know if Peter Paraso, 땅을 팔아서, sell your land, 집을 팔아서, sell your house. 되어왔습니다. 집을 팔아서 되어왔습니다. 피를 팔아서, 땅을 팔아서, 집을 팔아서 되어왔습니다. Okay. So father is encouraging people to do the 동반격파, breaking through on the neighborhood level, to witness to our neighbors. Praise God. All right, let's see what is going on. And I want to apologize for what happened yesterday. About 20 minutes into the program, suddenly got cut off, and I was talking about the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska, and we checked it. Anyway, we hope that that will not happen today, that we'll be able to maintain a strong internet connection. But, internet, still, it's only about 50 years old. Only 30 years since it really came in, sort of became popularized. I saw an article yesterday, and I was surprised. It said that AOL is shutting down its dial-up internet connections. And I thought, what? They're still doing that? I still have PTSD from those. I'm sure some of you do too. That was really terrible stuff, wasn't it? And my goodness, that was torture. And so, but for some reason, they've been keeping it alive all this time. And I have no idea why they would do that, except to torture people. Anyway, they're finally shutting it down. But I don't think that's what happened yesterday. Okay. All right. So now let's look at, I suppose we can look at maybe what's sort of, I don't know, President Trump is federalizing the Washington, D.C. police and stuff like that, but so forth. But I did see one article here on the Alaska meeting. So let's go to that. Okay. Or not. Okay, I guess it disappeared somewhere. All right, so we'll find it later on. All right, so he's going to he's going to federalize the Washington police, which we mentioned yesterday. And Tom Homan had an interview yesterday about that. Let's see what he says. And he says here, orders are Tom Homan told Newsmax on Monday that the people trying to peddle the story of a safer Washington, D.C. are the same ones who said the border was secure under the Biden administration. They think we're idiots. It's so safe, Homan told Rob Schmidt tonight. Go walk the Washington streets after dark and see how that works out for you. Homan joined Newsmax hours after President Donald Trump administration officials announced placing the Washington police under federal control and ordering the National Guard to the nation's capital to reduce crime, declaring a public safety emergency. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser pushed back, claiming the city is at a 30-year violent crime low. Media outlets on the left followed with reports of data, quote in quotes, to back Bowser's claim. I've been in law enforcement for 40 years. I won't transit DC without a gun, Homan said. And any of these reporters said the crime rate is way down and it's safer than they say. I dare any of them walk the streets of DC after dark. If that's safe, go ahead and do it and see how that works out for you. Of course, the elite, they go to Georgetown and and they'll leave before it really gets dangerous. They'll leave right, between, I guess, around 11 o'clock I guess they'll start leaving when the bars shut down. Not that I'm a specialist when the bars shut down, but the restaurants are closed and stuff like that. So certain areas, yes, Georgetown, I would suspect is relatively safe. Where else? Where else? Actually, nothing else comes to mind. The area around the White House is not safe. The area around, the Washington Times is certainly not safe. And the area around do they still have the Washington Church there? Anyway, around the Washington Church is definitely Columbia Road, definitely not safe. In fact, that's kind of dangerous up there. So yeah, the elites like to go to Georgetown and have a dinner at a nice restaurant and then get out of Washington before it really gets dangerous. So to them, it seems safe, I'm sure. Homan was asked who is pushing a narrative that those who live and work in Washington know to be false. It's the same people that said the border was secure as you and I watched thousands of people cross the border every day. They think we're idiots, Homan said. So, anybody that transits DC, works in DC, or lives in DC, they know the truth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right. I think we don't need to do very much more of that. So anyway, President Trump is really cracking down on these kinds of things. Okay. Now, perhaps this is related. I don't know, but South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung is going to go to Washington on August 25th, which is 2 weeks from yesterday. And he's going to the White House. He's going to meet Trump there, and that's going to be an interesting meeting. Of course, Lee Jae-myung was elected in June after Lee Jae-myung and his cohorts managed to goad, I guess you could say, goad the former President Yoon into declaring martial law unwisely. I think, at least at this point, it appears to have been an unwise decision. Because the left had taken over the legislature under Lee Jae-myung and also had taken over the courts, basically, sound familiar? And so that the president couldn't do anything, basically. I think his vetoes were being overturned, and essentially he had become a lame duck. And so I think in a final act of desperation, he declared martial law. But I've talked about this before, but I think because Yoon did not have a military experience, he did not really understand the military, and he thought the military would just blindly follow his order orders, but it did not. And when that happened, then everything fell apart. And now Yoon is sitting in jail, and his wife, I think, was also put in jail today. I think she was also detained today. I know they were expecting that to happen. I haven't checked to see if it actually did happen, but now I think the husband and wife are now both in jail. And uh, of course, the wife is in other words, the former first lady is involved in a number of situations, including um, stock market manipulation is one thing she's accused of, and also receiving bribes from the Family Federation and um, and other stuff, and other stuff that they may be. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that they're throwing at her right now. So she's going to stay in jail, and then they're going to go after the people who are sort of connected to that, and most likely, Park Cha-han, it appears, is also headed towards something like that, towards something like that. Well, we'll see. We don't want to presume what is going to happen to Park Cha-han, but we'll see what happens there. So anyway, Lee Jae-myung is a leftist president who ousted a conservative president just a couple of months ago, and he is pro-China, or he's, as I say here, friendly with China, friendly with North Korea, and not so much with the United States. But he needs the United States politically because even many in the sort of progressive camp, as they say here, or the leftist camp, do not want to come out right now and say that they want the U.S. forces to withdraw. They know that the majority of the population will not go along with that, and so they have to sort of do it slowly. So now he's going to meet President Trump, and I wonder if President Trump is going to give him one of those Oval Office shellackings that he gave to Zelensky and to some of the other foreign leaders that he's met. If he does, the ripple effects of that will be quite considerable here in South Korea. South Koreans have a it's difficult to put in words simply, but on the one hand, they put America on the pedestal, right? Because South Korea is you have to understand that South Korea historically has dealt with big powers, right? China, mostly China, but also Japan and Russia and the United States are the four major powers surrounding the peninsula. And the peninsula is very strategic, and so Japan and China fought a war over control of the peninsula in the late 19th century, and Japan won. And then Japan and Russia fought a war partly over control of the peninsula, and Japan won. And sort of Koreans themselves didn't have a whole lot to say about that. So, and of course, the Korean War and everything like that. So on the one hand, Koreans put America on the pedestal. So if the president of the United States were to really embarrass Lee Jae-myung in the Oval Office the way he embarrassed, humiliated Zelensky, or some of the others, if there's a sort of combative situation that they develop, like he has with others, with other, there's been some pretty sort of sharp give and take that he has with foreign leaders in front of the cameras. If that were to happen with Lee Jae-myung, and Lee Jae-myung were to be seen as sort of coming out on the bottom, then well, it would be the ripple effects here will be quite large. Although it's hard to predict exactly what would happen, but it will be interesting to see. Actually, I cannot presume to predict what it would be, but it would be a major, whatever the effects are, it would be a major effect. So we'll see what President Trump does, because President Trump tends not to really take into account those kinds of situations, those kinds of sensitive situations, right? He's going to do what he's going to do. But anyway, let's get to the meat of this. Or the more important thing is, what are they going to discuss? And one of the things they're obviously going to discuss is the security situation on the peninsula, and especially the evolving role of the U.S. forces, Korea, USFK. The current commander of USFK, or the Eighth Army, I guess, has been saying that the role of U.S. forces in South Korea needs to sort of be more broad, and also needs to address threats from China and Russia as well as from North Korea. That's one thing he's been saying. And the second thing he's been saying is that it's not about numbers, it's about capabilities, which I think pretty clearly indicates that he's going to reduce the numbers, or the numbers are going to go down. Right now, they're about 26,000, a little more than 26,000 U.S. troops on the peninsula. And when he says, okay, we're going to emphasize capabilities, not numbers, pretty clearly that means that the numbers are going to go down, right? They're not going to go up, that's for sure. And President Trump, of course, is interested in sort of saving money on defense stuff, and he's the kind of guy that says, hey, how come we're still over there after 70 plus years still defending these people? 70 plus years? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so about 72 years. How come we're still there defending these people? Can't they defend themselves? Is the kind of question that President Trump is liable to ask. And now South Korea is increasing its defense budget from what has been 2.6% currently to 3.8% over the next few years. And so already they're doing something that is going to, be good in the eyes of President Trump. But we'll see what happens on the 25th. Could be very explosive. But Lee needs to go to Washington and sort of convince Trump and others in Washington that he's really not as bad as he's been made out to be. Although he is. Okay. He is as bad as he's been made out to be. But he needs to convince people that that's actually not true. We'll see how he does that. He's pretty good at doing that. Let's see. Let's go through the rest of this story. Lee, who was elected president in a snap election in June, has made it a top priority to help his export-dependent country navigate the dramatic changes in the global trading environment triggered by Trump's tariff policies. And that's basically been worked out. So I don't think they're going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Developing the security alliance to a future-oriented comprehensive security alliance, in quotes, and economic security partnerships will feature highly in the meeting, presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jong told a briefing. Now, so on the one hand, future-oriented, the head of the USFK is saying, yeah, we're going to emphasize capabilities over numbers, and now the presidential spokesman is saying a future-oriented comprehensive security alliance. But I don't think, in fact, I'm pretty sure that this does not include China. South Korea wants to be friends with China, all right? China is a rising star in the eyes of many on the left here in Korea, and the United States is a setting star. Now, President Trump obviously is changing that, but people still have a question as to what is going to happen in, 3.5 years. What's going to happen? Even if it's someone like J.D. Vance, can J.D. Vance be as effective as Trump in leading the world in the way that Trump is leading it? Even I have some doubts about that. Can J.D. Vance really sit down with the likes of with basically with gangsters? Okay, Putin, Xi Jinping, and Ursula von der Leyen to include her in this. They're gangsters, and President Trump is treating them like gangsters. And Zelensky, of course, is maybe a small time gangster. But so can J.D. Vance really deal with him as forcefully as President Trump is succeeding in doing right now? Can J.D. Vance do that? I'm kind of doubtful. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm kind of doubtful. Anyway, they want a future-oriented, comprehensive security alliance. And what they mean by future-oriented, I think, might mean better relations with North Korea. And I think that's what probably they mean. And comprehensive security alliance, I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it's just something that's supposed to sound good. Based on the tariff deal reached last month, the two leaders will seek to push forward a partnership in the manufacturing sector, including in semiconductors, batteries, and shipbuilding, Kang said. Now, South Korea believes that they have a lot to offer the United States in the area of shipbuilding, especially since the U.S. is trying to rebuild its Navy. Trump announced on July 30th, the countries had reached a trade deal that would subject South Korean goods to 15% import duties, lowering the tariff he had initially set against one of America's top trade partners. Trump has said South Korea will announce investment plans at the upcoming summit and that Seoul had committed to making $350 billion of investments to be selected by him. That's not how it's being publicized here. In fact, the chief negotiator, he came back and said, this 350 billion thing, don't take that too seriously. Only about 5% of that is actually going to be in actual equity, and the rest of it's going to be, guarantees by the Export-Import Bank and stuff like that, just guarantees. But obviously, President Trump is saying, no, 350 billion, and I'm pretty sure I hear the word cash there, although he doesn't actually say it. So I think there's going to be some disagreement on that, and we'll see. We'll have to see who wins on that one. Oh boy, I tell you, these folks who are at the global level, who are jousting, basically like knights of old, jousting with each other. It's pretty interesting to watch them, and they're all trying to sort of outsmart the other guy and things like that. And you see it even in the articles about the Alaska meeting. The left is saying, Putin is going to walk all over Trump, or they don't say that, but what do they say? He's going to fool Trump or something like that. And it's all about that. It's all about that. So anyway, but when you really get down to it, they're just people. They're just people. Sinners just like everybody else. And so we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay. All right, so they're going to meet on the 25th, and we'll see how that goes. All right, let's see here. U.S.-China extend trade truce another 90 days. All right. Oh, here's the story I was looking for. Okay. Here's the story I was looking for. Alaska meeting. It's right there, big type. Trump suggests he'll know if Putin wants a peace deal with Ukraine soon into the meeting. Right. President Donald Trump said Monday that he expected to determine mere moments into his meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin this week whether it would be possible to work out a deal to halt the war in Ukraine. At the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made, Trump said at the White House press conference that he called to announce plans for a federal takeover of Washington's police force. He said he thought Friday's sit down with Putin in Alaska would be really a feel-out meeting. Trump added that it'll be good, but it might be bad. and predicted he may say, "Lots of luck, keep fighting," or I may say, "We can make a deal." Putin wants to lock in Russia's gains since invading Ukraine in February 2022, as Trump presses for a ceasefire that has remained out of reach. Trump's eagerness to reach a deal has raised fear in Ukraine and Europe about such an arrangement, favoring Russia without sufficient input from Ukraine. Trump has already alternately harshly criticized both leaders after promising and so far failing to swiftly end the conflict. Trump on Monday ducked repeated chances to say that he would push for Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to take part in his discussions with Putin, and was essentially dismissive of Zelensky and his need to be part of an effort to seek peace. He said the Ukrainian president had been to a lot of meetings without managing to halt a war that Russia started. Trump also noted that Zelensky had been in power for the duration of the war and said nothing happened during that time. He contrasted that with Putin, who has wielded power in Russia for decades. Trump said that after his meeting with Putin, the next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, but it could also be a meeting with Putin and Zelensky and me. European allies have pushed for Ukraine's involvement, fearful that discussions could otherwise favor Moscow. To that point, Trump said he would call Zelensky and European leaders after his discussions with Putin to tell them what kind of a deal. "I'm not going to make a deal. It's not up to me to make a deal." Trump spent the early part of his administration decrying Zelensky, even suggesting he was a dictator because his country has not held elections during the war. Zelensky was hounded out of the Oval Office in February after Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance suggested he hadn't been grateful enough for U.S. support. And that, by the way, is something that could happen to Lee Jae-myung as well. Lee Jae-myung had better say something about, thank you for all the lives that were lost in the Korean War, and we appreciate that. We appreciate all the help that you've given us over the years, stuff like that. I don't know if he's planning on doing that. The left actually thinks that the U.S. should not have intervened in the Korean War. This is what the South Korean left, all right? This is what they call the Chusapa, or the Chusapa is a contraction for a longer title that means the Juche thought faction. So these are the people who believe that South Korea should be governed by North Korea's Juche ideology. Yes, and they are in the Blue House, by the way. They're in the presidential palace. They are. Okay. And they were in when, during past administrations as well. It's just sometimes it boggles the mind how some people are just so, anyway, they just gravitate, I guess, towards whatever's going to give them the most power. And they see themselves as the elite, even though if North Korea were to actually take over South Korea, you can be assured that the first people to be purged would be the South Korean communists and leftists. That's just how a North Korean Communist Party works. And this is what they've done in the past. They've done that in the past, but somehow these people don't read their history, I guess. Anyway, so Zelensky was hounded out of the Oval Office. Okay. That would be interesting. Maybe that would be good, maybe, if Lee Jae-myung could be hounded out of the Oval Office as well. That would certainly, certainly, nothing is certain, I guess. Nothing is certain. More recently, Trump has expressed frustration with Putin that Russia hasn't appeared to take a push for a ceasefire more seriously, and softened his tone towards Zelensky. His comments Monday suggested he might have another change of heart. "President Putin invited me to get involved," Trump said. He noted that he thought it was very respectful that Putin is coming to the U.S. for Friday's meeting instead of insisting that Trump go to Russia. Well, realistically, come on. I mean, for one thing, Trump cannot go to Russia because of the sanctions. Because we're not supposed to be giving money to Russia, or not much anyway. I think we still are in some ways, but that would not be fair to expect Trump to go to Russia. So of course it has to be an American. I'd like to see a ceasefire. I'd like to see the best deal that can be made for both parties, Trump said. The president repeated that any major agreement would involve land swaps without elaborating. He had threatened Moscow with more economic sanctions if more isn't done with work towards the ceasefire, but suggested Monday that should Friday's meeting be successful, he would see a day when the US and Russia normalize trade relations. And, it's not just Russia, but China. China is actually, I think, most important partner here. And I think Putin is looking very carefully at what Xi Jinping wants. Putin is expected to be unwavering in his demands to keep all the territory his forces now occupy. And of course, this is always going to be his opening position, but we'll have to see. And to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, right? Okay, with the long-term aim of returning it to Moscow's sphere of influence. Zelensky insists he will never consent to any formal Russian annexation of Ukrainian territory or give up a bid for NATO membership. Well, again, Zelensky, as the president of the country, no, he cannot really say now that he's going to give up territory to Russia. Of course, as president, he cannot do that. But later on, he will say, well, we were forced to do it. Big bad Trump forced me to do it. He could maybe make an argument like that to his people because somehow he has to justify it to his people. Otherwise, he could be in big trouble. Not just losing an election, but bigger trouble than that. Putin believes he has the advantage on the ground as Ukrainian forces struggle to hold back Russian advances along the 1,000-kilometer front or 600-mile front. On the front lines, few Ukrainian soldiers believe there's an end in sight to the war. With the Europeans and Ukrainians so far not invited to the summit, Germany sought to prepare by inviting Trump, Zelensky, and the NATO chief and several other European leaders for a virtual meeting on Wednesday. The German chancellery said the talks would seek additional ways to pressure Russia and prepare for peace negotiations and related issues of territorial claims and security. Well, we'll have to see, right? I guess that's going to happen on Wednesday. Okay. All right, so people are still dying. Let's hope that something can be done on Friday in Alaska. And we still don't know exactly where it's going to be, or we have no idea actually where it's going to be. All right, let's see here. Let's look at what's Epoch Times these days doesn't have a whole lot done. Okay. See that? Yeah, South Korea launches police probe against conservatives for tearing the Chinese flag. Would they do that for the American flag? I don't think they would. I don't think they would. And back in the 1980s, there was an incident where an American professor teaching at Yonsei, I believe it was, Yonsei University, showed up for work. And he found that there was a huge American flag painted on the pavement where people are entering the gate to the main gate to the school. And it was drawn on the pavement in such a way that in order to get into the school, you had to step on the American flag. I remember that kind of situation. I don't remember the police getting involved in that. And certainly, come on, the American flag is abused in many places around the world constantly, including South Korea. And I don't ever remember the police getting involved. I may be wrong, but here we see that the police are going to get involved with this situation where apparently some South Korean conservatives did something to the Chinese flag. Right. That shows you where South Korea is today. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me do a little search here on China. Well, the good thing about the typhoon is that China's not likely to attack during the typhoon. So I think at least rest easy on that. Okay. Okay, and China disinformation is evolving according to a report. Okay, official blames China for a seating arrangement. Okay, so we got the typhoon approaching. Okay, that's about it. Yes, it's I think I said this yesterday after. No, I had a great show yesterday. It's just that you guys only got to listen to the first third of it. No, for 20 minutes, I didn't realize that I was off the air, and so I continued. And then I realized it, and then we stopped the show at about 40 minutes. But anyway, so about you only got you got half of it. But anyway, um, Taiwan and the Philippines, and uh, I think yesterday I was saying probably after the break, or after the internet went down, that we have to take seriously what these dictators say they're going to do, because often they do it. Not always, not always. North Korea was saying that it's going to invade South Korea for decades, and it never did. And now Kim Jong Un is saying that we're no longer interested in uniting with South Korea. We just want to, if the time comes, we're going to dominate them, or we will exercise self-defense by attacking them then. But someone like Xi Jinping says he's going to attack Taiwan. Probably a very good idea for us to take that seriously. Even though I've said that with our prayer in Cheongsong, perhaps we can change the direction of their aggression towards Russia. But uh, but that's very unlikely. So so um, we need to decide how we're going to respond to that kind of situation, how we're going uh, to support our brothers and sisters in Taiwan in that kind of situation. And I think it'll be pretty difficult. Remember how China took over Hong Kong? That was by negotiation that they took over Hong Kong, and then it was well by by sort of legal means, right? So they passed these security laws. Hong Kong legislature would have passed it, so then they passed it in the Beijing legislature, the rubber stamp legislature, and then imposed that security situation on Hong Kong. And now Hong Kong is completely controlled. The press is completely controlled now from Beijing, and Macau pretty much the same thing. So we know that China prefers to do things like that in a way that sort of has a veil of sort of a thin veneer of legitimacy. Say, hey, we passed it through, we put it through the legislature. And perhaps Taiwan will be something like that, perhaps, where China will gradually sort of infiltrate the political parties and so forth of Taiwan, and eventually just sort of get the Taiwan legislature to vote to join China in some way. Recently, the current president of Taiwan, who was conservative, attempted to kick out the pro-China members of the legislature by having sort of recall votes done on them, and they all failed. It failed, right? Or at least so far it's failed. I think they're going to have more, but so far all those recall votes have failed, and uh, it looks like China is succeeding in gradually infiltrating more and more of Taiwan's institutions, even though obviously not all that much yet, because the people of Taiwan elected a conservative for this president, and also the previous president also was conservative, who was and the current president is more hawkish on China than the one before him. So we need to pray. We need to pray that the people of Taiwan can wake up. Eventually, it's up to the people. It really is. The providence is always up to the human portion of responsibility, right? And the people of Taiwan have a portion of responsibility to fulfill, and that is to vote for the right people and vote out the bad people. And so far, they did that in the presidential level, but not on the legislature level. And as we see in South Korea, once the left is able to take control of the legislature and the courts, then it becomes very, very difficult for a president, even though he's conservative, to operate. So we'll see how things progress in Taiwan, but there may be a kind of a similar situation happening in Taiwan as has happened in South Korea. Um, Now in South Korea, I just might add that the former first lady, she really did her husband no favors, and sort of the various things that she appears to have been doing, at least is alleged to have done, such as stock market manipulation. I don't know. Maybe she'll come out innocent. I don't know, but she sure is accused of a lot of stuff. All right, let's see here. And if Satan can't get you, Father says this in the Chan Song if Satan cannot get you directly, he'll get you through through your family, through your wife, through your children, whatever other means he can use. So we need to be careful about that, and we need to educate our families, understand, so that they can understand what is at stake. All right, let's see here. What else do we have? All right, well, let's go through Epic Times, I suppose. Okay. Not really excited about what Epic Times has these days, but let's go through. Trump nominates new commissioner for Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay. And okay, food allergies doubled in a decade, study finds. Okay. Trump places DC police under federal control, orders National Guard in Washington. 90-day extension on China's tariff deadline. And clinics are ending gender treatments for kids in wake of Trump's policies. It's interesting how changing one person in the White House can have a huge effect like this. Let's see. Trump meets with Intel CEO after calling for his resignation over alleged China leak. It turns out he's Malaysian, or actually he's an American of Malaysian descent, but his family is, they trace their roots back to China. But I think so. This is sometimes what Trump does. He kind of shoots from the hip sometimes. And he says he has no financial interest in China. Appalachian Democrats, independents seek new direction. To hear weekend rallies his ears. So Bernie Sanders is trying to do well in West Virginia. Is that right? Is that what's going on here? To hear Bernie Sanders in weekend rallies. Where is this? Appalachian. Vermont. Wait a second. Vermont is not nice. North Carolina, I see. North Carolina. All right. So Asheville, North Carolina. All right. Bernie Sanders. Yeah. It's interesting how these leftists, they continue to grow old and just seemingly never die. There was a photograph of the members of the Communist Party of Taiwan, and it's all these old folks. I wonder if they still have it up here. All these old folks, and you just wonder, don't they get any young people these days? Yeah, I don't see it right now. A bunch of old fogies hanging around. talking about Marx and Lenin and revolution. All right, let's see here. Yeah, let's go back to Breitbart. Okay, explosion and um, yeah, not a whole lot is exciting me this morning. The DC thing is important, I'm sure, if you're there in DC. And he's also saying he's going to take over 5 more cities. And I don't know how that's going to work. DC, of course, is originally under federal control anyway, was or originally was. But other cities, sending National Guards, well, he did it in Los Angeles, I suppose, but we'll see how that works out. I think that the fact that President Trump is having to do this may be showing that the American experiment or American democracy really is coming to an end, and we need to look for what can we develop into, right? Not that America is going to die, but America needs to be reborn in some way, and of course we have the answer to that. That is the Chattanooga Constitution, and I think we need to look for ways in which that transition can happen over the next decades, we assume, although you never know with God. Sometimes he does things much more quickly than we anticipate. But the fact that the National Guard has to be called in, basically, I don't want to use the word police state, but that's very easily what this could become in Washington, D.C. I've talked previously about my experience in South Korea under martial law, where the military police would come out and direct traffic. And they would do that when martial law was called to sort of give a very quick and very definite message that, well, the military is in charge now. And the military is directing traffic. And if you commit a traffic infraction, you may be sent to military court. Sometimes, actually, yeah, common criminals were tried in military courts in South Korea. And sending the National Guard to Washington to cut down on crime sort of seems like something similar. And of course, at that time, and this was the early 1980s or late 1970s that I saw this. And at that time, South Korea was coming out of and into a more democratic situation. But now America seems to be going towards a more authoritarian political structure, which is the natural evolution of democracy. Democracies or republics, just like the Roman Republic and others, generally tend to devolve into authoritarian states because people can govern themselves for a time, but then they figure out that they can vote free stuff for themselves, and 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 society begins to fall apart, which I think is what is happening in America right now. So it is sad. And when President Trump says "Make America Great Again," I don't think we can do that by trying to go back to what existed before. If America is to restore its greatness, it has to move forward into something that is greater than what existed before. I think it was it was someone's autobiography. I will not name the person, but I sometimes had I was asked to translate people's autobiographies in the past, and there was one person who sort of idealized America of the 1950s and sort of saying how America needs to get back to that kind of a situation. But America in the 1950s was a very racist country. It was a very segregated country. I lived in Washington, in Dallas, Texas, for a year. And even as a 10-year-old, I could see that Dallas was an extremely segregated city. So we don't want to go back to that. Obviously, we can't go back to that. No one would stand for it, and not just African Americans, but also people like me, and the vast majority of white people would not stand for it, or Asian people either. So, and we're not going to go back to the time, for example, in the 1940s, where FDR put Japanese Americans into uh, detainment camps simply because of their ethnic origin, even if they were U.S. citizens. He did that. We're not going to go back to that either. But we need to go forward to something greater than what has ever existed in the past. And I hope that President Trump can find that way forward. It's already there. We already have it. We already have it. It's just a matter of finding the path to get from here to there. And I hope that can happen. And we need to pray, I think, that America can succeed in doing that. And then America can become the light on the hill once again, I think. Okay. All right, got to go. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, and we've already finished our study on the three sermons on lineage. So we'll be doing something else tomorrow. Until then, God bless, Godspeed. Yes,